We are going live. We are streaming on Facebook. Good morning, Facebook world. This is Michelle Hoffman's Liner Notes, and I'm so excited to share with you today Pat Sheveland. Pat helps grieving families find peace so they may move forward and find renewed joy. And if you're in that situation, so you can move forward and find renewed joy. Liner notes are the insight that artists and curators offer into what's really going on at the time of creation and what's inspired that recording, that song to be, and what's happening in the world around them that inspired them to write the music, make the masterpiece, write the manuscript, whatever it is. The liner notes are advice that matters that the creator contributes. I help business owners and CEOs focus on their zone of genius, reducing the overwhelm, giving you the more time to do what you love, and increase your income by helping your managers develop highly professional teams that meet the revenue goals. I'm Michelle Hoffmann. Discover how I can help you and your company succeed at lightthesparklady@gmail.com. LIGHTDHE SPARKLADY@gmail.com. lightthesparklady@gmail.com. Pat, thank you so much for joining us today. Will you tell us a little bit about the clients you work with, who comes to you to gain that support, and how you help them? And if you're willing to share a gift with us at the end of this advice that matters through liner notes to those people who are listening.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, the people that come to me, it varies actually. I started out where my coaching program was really targeted for grieving mothers. And I'll go into that a little bit later about why that was important to me to focus on that. But what I found is that there's lots of guys out there, there's husbands and wives that are going through challenges with grief. I recently just worked with an 18-year-old young boy where he had a couple of issues with his grandfather, and then his mom's best friend had died, and it was like his second mom. And so I get a wide variety of people who are grieving, and it may not even be grieving the death of a loved one, but it might be, even like in this world today, grieving the loss of a job, divorce, or especially when we have children that are struggling, or family members with chemical dependency, and there's a lot of suicidal ideation going on out there. So I work with I've had parents come to me and we start working with that grief, because we can grieve people who are still alive.
That's so, so true. I totally agree with you. And the reality of the current world that we're in is that you're right. It's any major life role change, and we're grieving the loss of the identity that we had before this transition, be it welcoming a new phase of life, a developmental change in your life. I mean, think about how hard it was to be a teenager and how we grieve the loss of our youth, and we want to do the things that brought us joy when we were little, but now we're straddling between being a child and being independent and mature. So then we're grieving the loss of that, and that as we move forward into who we are becoming. We grieve the loss of identities, our own identity of who we were in a specific role, as you were saying, be it an individual, be it a partner, or inviting a partner in, be it inviting children into the world, or a new relationship, or setting them free and, letting them fly, or changing jobs, changing communities. As you point out, all of these things are grief, because we need to figure out a way to hold on to those things and what they treasure while they free us up to move forward. So that's even more than, oh my God forbid, somebody loses a loved one, a parent, a spouse, a child, a pet. Any of those would be considered grieving the loss of who we used to be. And if we're running away from that situation to get involved in risky and dangerous behaviors, you're right. These are real issues that do have grief involved in them. So
Absolutely.
people come to you and you help them identify what they're actually grieving.
You know, usually people will come to me and they know that they have something going, and there usually is some grief trigger that's going on. So, you know, most of the time it's people who have experienced the death of someone that they loved very dearly.
Yeah.
And so they'll get referred to me, or they'll see me on social media and say, you know, I've got some stuff going on here. I'd like to talk to you. It's interesting, though, that sometimes people come to me for challenges and deep grief stuff, but they don't even realize that it's associated with the death of someone that happened years ago.
Wow.
I had a client, one of my first clients, this was many, many years ago, but she came to me, well, actually it was the death of her father. And it was a year later and she was still struggling, and her marriage was not in great shape. She had some estrangement with some of her children. Things
No.
were just not happy in her job. I mean, everything, if you wanted to tick mark everything in her life, they were just not going well. Well, as soon as I started talking to her, she opened up about how her 7-year-old daughter had died 30 years prior. Now,
Oh,
she thought that she had kind of dealt with that. But then as we started opening up and having conversations, she realized, and we realized, that that truly had not been um, grieved in a healthy way for her. And so then it started impacting everything forward.
right. Right. So sometimes we're not even aware that we're holding on to grief and it's got a hold on us.
Right.
So, how do you help people unwrap that and identify it without, I mean, without them freaking out?
Well, you know, first, I want people to tell me their story. You know, I feel like I'm um, the container for them to really share
Mhm.
what's going on with them. And then I'm a certified coach. And so that's part of my background and I'm a nurse. So I'm used to really interviewing people and hearing their stories and really holding the space for that. And then I have a program. I have a program that I work with people on, and I call it the Breathe program. Because what's the first thing that we do when we start grieving?
Yeah.
And we forget to exhale. And so we need to be able to do the inhale and do the exhale. So I feel like my program is helping to teach people how to exhale and to be able to breathe freely, to bring health back into their life, physically, emotionally, spiritually, you know, kind of that whole package, so that they can really start the healing process. Grief to me is part of a healing process. And if we do not allow grief to occur in a healthy manner, I coined it kind of failed grief. And then
Oh,
all of a sudden you can be like this woman that 30 years after the fact, her whole life is falling apart, big pile of muck, and she couldn't understand why. And then when we went back and unwrapped that and helped to do a lot of the activities that I do with my clients and creating the awareness, she started opening up, and wow, it changed everything.
so it's so interesting because even my knee-jerk response was, I don't want to go there. Why would
Yeah.
I why would I come to you and have you help me dig through things that I've clearly buried 30 years ago? But then you obviously are capable of holding space and inviting people in a safe way to turn that light bulb on so that they don't have failed grief, so that they can grieve in a healthy way, so that they don't get stuck in it or have these things that have been holding them back that we have no idea this has been happening. And I mean, what a gift in that regard. And as you were saying it, I was thinking, the breathe process that you share, it's that exhale that is like, I can relax. So I
Mhm.
wonder if we're actually literally holding on to something, and we've been holding on to it so long that we don't even know how it's holding us back. Wow.
Right. Right. So yeah, so that's really what my program is, and breathe is an acronym for all the various things that I do. Um, but it is, I think, I also am a Qigong, which is ancient Chinese medicine teacher. And what we know is that grief, deep sadness, depression, all of that holds in our lungs and our lung energy system. So when we're grieving, and if we don't have the opportunity to work within that grief to find healing ways to move forward positively, it affects our lung energy system, and that can cause lung cancers, breast cancers up in the chest area. It can cause so many physical ailments. And so part of releasing that is allowing that energy to flow open and release it to the air, give air to it.
Beautiful. So if we're not able to give air to it and we're not even aware of this, because sometimes I know people who are not aware that they're shallow breathing or they're not even taking a deep breath. And that might actually be a signal that they're holding on to something that's holding on to them. I don't know how, suddenly I just coined that phrase for you. Um, because that's what it's feeling like. But you may not even know it because you're dealing with what is right in front of you and you're overwhelmed, or you're having fear of failure or fear of success or fear of connecting in relationships for some reason. You may not know why that is because you can't give air to it, um, and that it's holding you back, or you're so busy that you're not taking the moment to figure these kinds of things out. So when you're working with people to help prevent failed grief, prevent health issues as a result of not having the opportunity and the tools and the guidance to move through grief, how do you help people?
Okay, so as I said, I have a program. It's not a cookie cutter because grieving is not cookie cutter. You know that. Um, we all have our own way, our own journey, our own time frame. There is no specific way that we're going to do this. But I have learned, so this is what I say, all, especially the women that I've worked with, grieving moms have come to me many times over the years. And what I've found is that those who can find renewed joy, find
Mm.
life filled with purpose, have some real specific commonalities about what they've done in their life.
Very
And
good.
where people have failed grief, there are also some commonalities. So I say the people that I've worked with, the families I've worked with, are the ones that really developed this program. I just happen to be the scribe and put it together in a nice little package. And I have the coaching tools to help people. But they're really the ones that are with my wisdom keepers. And they shared with me what works. So I'm going to the experts and they have shared this with me. So my Breathe program, there's lots of different things. First, we have to understand, who are you? I think you talked earlier, we change. And so when we
Right.
have some kind of a traumatic event, some kind of thing that we're grieving, we're not the same person we were the day before. And so we have to figure out, where are we starting? What's kind of the playing field that we're starting with? Our values may have changed. What was important in the past
Right.
may not at all be important in the future. So we do that, and I do some exercises, and I do use some tools to help people really analyze what's going on with them. Then we start taking a look at, what would you like, how would you like to feel? What would you like to look like? What would you like in your life? Even 6 months or a year out. I'm not talking 10 years out. I'm not looking at making this big life plan. Let's just look out for the next 6 months or a year and just say, how would you like to be?
Right.
What would be important?
Because after a major traumatic event, like the loss, in my case, the loss of a spouse, I can barely see one breath ahead of me.
Right.
So you
Right.
actually help people relax into being able to see further.
Yep.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And I know that you and I, we had a lot of similarities in your first book and mine, because we both read them and we're in the grief space. Um, the next thing is really engaging who I call the tribe. And I think you probably know this too. I mean, when we're grieving in our family, our other family members are grieving. And
Right.
so they may not be our best support system. We need to have some people that can actually have a little objectivity, be there for us when we ring them in the middle of the night. So I really have my clients work on developing and creating a tribe and coming up with a treaty with their tribe. In
Nice.
other words, what are we going to agree upon here? Like if they call me, I'm going to agree that I'm going to pick up the phone, even if I'm just in a puddled mess, sobbing on my bed. But coming up with having that 2 to 3 people, it doesn't have to be a lot of people, but a couple of people. And I encourage them not to put their family members into that, because a lot of times we lean on our family members or they lean on us so much. And that's layered grief. For you, you were grieving the death of your husband and you're grieving your children grieving. As a mom, I've been there. That's horrible because you can't protect them. So there's so much grief going on and it's layered. So we want to make sure that we have the right support team for that. So that's part of what I have people do. I also have them figure out a personalized health and wellness program. And it's not like you're going to go out and start jogging and doing all of that. As I said, it's like, it's very simple things.
I'm laughing
I know.
because that's what I did.
Some people
And it was
need
like,
that.
yeah, the kids are going through this too, as you were pointing out, as I was building what I call, and I coach my clients on building an advisory board, very similar to your tribe. And then you're like the health and wellness. And I'm like, yeah, I haven't been to the mailbox in months and months. And a girlfriend of mine was like, I'm going to go run a half marathon. I'm like, me too. And I did it. But I was
Oh,
always wondering, what are people running, from? And then I realized, oh, we're running to something. And the kids eventually, they ran half marathons with me. So that's why I was laughing on that one.
very
Um,
cool.
but you're right. Again, if you can't even see what's in front of your nose to take a breath, that's no time to be running a half marathon.
No. And so what I do is, as I said, I'm a Qigong teacher. So Qigong is a very gentle, loving
Much better.
way of, helping. Well, I like to run too, but that's a very gentle way of just kind of getting in and opening up the energy channels in our body and helping us to relax, to do that breath work, right? Just to relax in it, because grief has those tumultuous and the roller coaster of emotions, right? And so to help with that. And then, I have simple tools. So I have them create their little faith. And faith, I coined the phrase, finding awesome inspiration to heal. Because
Oh,
faith
nice.
have to be a religious or a spiritual connotation to it. It's finding awesome inspiration to heal. And some of those things, I wrote out a list of 40 little things, but I encourage people, what are the things that you can do for self-care? So maybe it's just taking a bath with Epsom salts. Or one of the things I say is, if you're deep and you're just sobbing your eyes out, take some breaths. And I teach them how to breathe. Open the window and see if you can listen to birds or leaves rustling on a tree. Or if you're in a city, even just listening to the city white noise. Just breathe through it, and that helps relax. So there's lots of different things, like you have a lot of plants in your beautiful indoor spacious place there. It can be growing a plant. It can be
Right.
just hanging in that. So that's some of the things. It's not necessarily you have to go to the gym and work out.
Right.
So that's one of the things I help them with.
Everyone has their timing, and to be able to, like you were saying, take a moment and be in the present and focus, to be able to listen to what's going on around you, to be able to open your peripheral vision. And maybe it is just growing at the speed of nature. That's what
Yeah.
it takes. That's what it takes.
My daughter-in-law and I have just binge watched all of Grey's Anatomy seasons, all of them up
Yeah.
until this present point. And what's so cool is when they're in some real trauma, these gals, these doctors, they dance. They just hop around and they dance and they
So
just let it
good.
all out. So, those are some of the things that can be in your faith toolbox, is just a way to release that energy and feel it just move.
And be in your body. So with the Breathe program, you reinforce who are you? Not necessarily who, well, I guess you identify who you were. And it's not always the world that we want, but it's the world that we have that we're moving into. And to understand how to live fully with the current constraints of the world that you're living in. And then, and also realize that our values change. So allowing permission to change with that is probably a big gift that you offer. And then also to create that vision of what would you like in your life. I remember we moved across the country at one point, and I was having such a hard time leaving what I had rooted so deeply. And I realized it became much simpler and easier and more exciting when I had an understanding of what I was moving to. And so by creating a vision for people, and it could be 1 second, 1 day, a month, it doesn't have to be that far out, but creating the world that you want or envisioning the world that you want to move into. And then also engaging your tribe who's going to be there for you when you need them. And that could very well be you might need to create a treaty so that they're willing to pick up in the middle of the night and just hear the release of tears and the moment that you're in so that you can peel back the onion layers and move forward. And then you were talking about personalizing a health and wellness program, which is the right way to go. And you're also a nurse, so you're doing this with experience.
Mm-hmm.
And applying the right level of health and wellness to the situation, which is so compassionate and brings so much kindness. And then, of course, the faith program is gorgeous because it's the faith that we create within ourselves. And what were you saying? It was finding awesome inspiration to heal. Did I get it?
Yep.
Gorgeous. That is all about self-care. So carry
Yep.
on. What else? What other tips and tools do you have to
Oh,
do the breathe process?
okay. So part of this, because this is very, I'm a grief coach. I work in that space. And so part of it is I wrote the book for parents, for grieving parents. And so in the book, I talk about honoring your child, but it's for honoring whoever it is has died or the changes. But what's coming to me now, and which is going to be my next book, is really about honoring the child. We all talk about the child within, because when we come and we are hit on the side of the head with deep grief, deep loss, we bring all of our past experiences,
Oh, sure we
all
do.
of our traumas, all of our, even our generational beliefs and those traumas forward. We know that that'll, it impacts our DNA. It can impact the DNA of our children, our children's children. So that's part of what honoring. And I help my clients figure out what kind of ceremonies would you have. And I
Mm,
also am a certified celebrant for celebrations of lives and funerals and
right.
that type of thing. So I do that on the side. And I
That's
just
a big thing. Wait,
well,
let's
not on the
talk
side, but
about that for just a moment
okay.
because
All
that's
right.
actually a really big deal.
Yeah.
Because you have all of this life experience to help people move through grief and loss and celebrate the big life events. You almost glossed over that one. Oh no. Because you
Sorry.
actually do honor each individual and those who affect and how each individual affects other people. So you're honoring someone who may have passed, you're honoring everyone who they've left behind, and all that impacts them. And so you were ceremony of life events. So there are other life events that you're also licensed to officiate. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. But I do, for the certified celebrant, work with funerals and celebration of lives and those type of things. I believe, and the reason why I did this and got some education around this is that that's your first step in your grief process. And
Mm,
if that initial process is not handled well, and I even experienced that with my own dad's funeral. It just did
sorry.
not go well. A lot of things were forgotten, and it was just very vanilla.
Mm.
And I believe that, you so need to have this so that the family, this is their first step. And my goal is that they walk from that ceremony, whatever we're doing, and they just feel like, oh, I feel so good about the way that we honored mom, dad, our child, whatever it may be. And I go in purposely that even though I may not know their loved one, when I sit down and interview them, I want to walk away like I was best friends with that person. I
Right.
know everything about them so that I can really bring it to the table when we're doing eulogies and that celebration of life. So that's really like that first step, because I want to make sure that, you know, most people come to me well after the fact, but that's where I know that I can create an impact too for people that are not affiliated with their churches and they just want to have a kind of a little bit different kind of ceremony.
Well, you were speaking to this at the very beginning of our conversation because 30 years may pass. And if you don't have that ceremony, tradition, whatever that is for you to acknowledge that there's been a huge change in your life from that grieving that loss. And you gave the example of a woman who couldn't figure out why things weren't going well in her life after 30 years. So not only are you helping people uncover what that could have been so that they are free to move forward into their lives, but also that whatever grief holds, that we can identify that treasure so that it actually propels us forward in our life in such a healthy and supportive, inspired way. And that you offer this at the moment of truth by being an officiate is really what I wanted to highlight because that's a huge gift. But what happens when people don't realize that they're running into these obstacles and things? Because it's easier to not notice it and just keep going and ignore it.
Absolutely. Well, what happens? There can be physiological changes within yourself, as I said, with the health and that type of thing. Um, Relationships can just crumble
Mm.
and get very strained because people may not understand what's going on with you and you want certain things from them. So all of a sudden, things are just not working well. The communication may not be helpful. Some people may need feel the need to self-medicate in some ways,
Mm.
and so then all just to kind of numb it. So all these things can occur. Jobs, look at what you do getting into corporations. I was a corporate exec for 25 years. I think back now and I wish that I think I did a pretty good job with my folks that were grieving and going through a lot of different life stuff, because this is me. But I
Right.
think I could have been so much better and helped them so much more, if I had been aware and helped them through some of these processes more intimately so that they could move forward. Because your job, I'm sure you thought after your husband died, oh my God, I can't, how the heck am I going to go back to work? I can't even think. This fog is just like totally blinding me. I can't even think how to put the toast in the toaster oven.
So that brings up a very good point to understand the practical and compassion that's required to move through grief so that you can, in the workplace, continue to be engaged and excel and as a top performer. Um, that it's a good point. Thank you for that. Kudo on that one. So what would be a signal that somebody might that trigger to know that, oh, you know what? Things are actually not going the way I'd like them to. And I wonder if this health situation or the fact that I need to recalibrate all of my relationships because for some reason, the way that they're communicating and the way I'm communicating is not jiving all of a sudden, or that things are happening that didn't happen before this major loss. What kind of signals or triggers would inspire someone to reach out to you? What should people be paying attention to?
Well, a lot of my clients, they're just like they can't sleep. because
Mm,
their thought is all about
big
their
one.
loved one who has died, or when they do sleep, the first thing when they wake up is this. And so it's a constant, and they're so exhausted. Grieving, as you know, is exhausting. This is tough work. It's part of the healing process, and it is work. It's work to grieve and to put one foot forward in front of the other. But that's what, people come and just like, I can't continue this way. I'm not barely functioning in my life. Or it is, I had a couple that came and their son had taken his life,
Mm,
and they were about 7 months out from it, and she was still having like these nightmares because she's the one who found him. And so she would
yeah.
go back, and so she had this post-traumatic stress thing going on,
Exactly.
and she said, all I want to be able to do is stop having these nightmares.
Hmm.
Now, I am not a magician. I am not a doctor. I'm not a psychotherapist, none of that. And so, if anybody needs that, I really recommend that they need to
Yeah.
go forward and do that. But with her, it was for her and her husband to be able to come to me. And the thing is, when I talked about that tribe, they were so connected with each other. They absolutely did this, understood each other so well, but they were afraid to talk and give air to their own grief
Mhm.
because they're afraid that they were going to hurt the other
Right.
person and open up the wounds for them. So coming to me was like an ability to just be able to talk through some stuff, and knowing that I was the safety container for their spouse. So if they were talking, they knew I'd take care of their spouse, and they weren't
Right.
going to break into a million pieces like Humpty
Ooh, what a
Dumpty.
gift. What a gift. So, how can somebody reach out to somebody like you when they do get that signal that it's time to just even find out? Am I holding on to grief that's holding me back? Is this what's blocking me from moving forward in my life? Is there a way, I think I might have it going on, but when you're busy taking care of everyone and everything, who's taking care of you? What, how would people reach out to somebody like you, Pat? What kind of contact information would you have? Can you offer us?
Very easy. Well, there's a couple of different things. So I want to offer up first, people can reach me and we can get on a phone call. There's no charge, anything like that. We just chat. I get to know you, and I just really want to hear your story. That's the main thing,
Mm,
because just giving it air is extremely important. So you can go to www.healingfamilygrief.com, and I have a calendar where you can set up time and just get on my calendar. The other thing is, I do have my book. This is my first book, and this is How Do I Survive 7 Steps for Living After Child Loss. It's directed to child loss, but actually it works for any kind of grief. And you can get a free copy, a free electronic copy from me by just going onto my website. Again, it's www.patsheveland. Or no, sorry, that was my old one. I almost blew that one.
family.
www.healingfamilygrief.com.
Okay, so healingfamilygrief.com is where
Yes.
you can go to get a gifted copy of Pat's book and learn about the breathe process so that you are not overwhelmed, so you're not getting involved in risky and dangerous behaviors, so that you can actually live your full and happy life. Pat, thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us today on Liner Notes.
Thank you, Michelle. It's an honor.